All right, old son, I'm going to introduce you now to this marvellous chap, Christopher Ettridge, who's going to talk to you about the second series of Goodnight Sweetheart and his experiences in playing the avuncular and lugubrious Reg Deadman. Thank you very much. Christopher Ettridge was born in 1948 in the West Middlesex Hospital, which is in Isleworth, and I was brought up in a 1930s semi-detached house in Twickenham, so long way away from Reg Deadman's East End. I think, gosh, the first time I would ever been to the East End was when I was a boy. My dad used to go to a Jewish tailor in the East End by the name of something, Creamer was his name, and he would have his occasionally have a suit made there. And he took me up there, and it must have been about 1956, something like that. And it felt like a very alien world to me. So I was brought up a middle-class boy, very, very far from the sort of background that Reg Deadman would have had. I think I became interested in acting because I was looking for something when I was at school that I got some acknowledgement for. I noticed that that kids got lots of acknowledgement if they were really good at sport, or if they were really bright and academic. And I was neither of those things. I used to love sport, particularly cricket, but I was bloody hopeless at it. So I couldn't be in any of the teams. And I found just an ability when little sort of playlets or things came up at school. This was at my primary school, that I had a facility for being able to make people laugh, and I really liked that. And then when I went to the grammar school, there was a chance to be in some plays, and I put myself up for the play, and I got in the play, and people laughed a lot at what I did. And I went to an all-boys school, so I started off playing girls. And I think the very first thing I did was I played a white witch in some, I can't remember what the play was. And then I got invited to be in a school play and played the maid, Tweenie, in The Admirable Crichton. And people just really, really liked me, liked it, laughed at me, and I thought, yes, this is fun. I like this. And then that was so successful that I was offered the part of St. Joan in Joan of Arc, in the next school play. My mother always thought that was the best thing I ever did. But so that's how I sort of got interested in it. And then later on, when I was 16, I joined a really good local amateur group in Teddington, very close to where Goodnight Sweetheart was shot, funnily enough. Because that was all the studios we used were Teddington studios, so that was home territory for me. My dad had a shop in Teddington as well, had a radio and television shop there. Yeah, so that's how I got sort of my interest in it. It was a craving for acknowledgement, really. I first became involved in Goodnight Sweetheart in the same sort of way that, most actors become involved in most projects. Basically I had a phone call from my agent saying, oh, darling, I've got you a nice interview for a few episodes in a new sitcom for BBC. This character, I think, would be in the first 4 episodes of 6. It's be quite nice. She said, now, I've got hold of the script, and you mustn't say that you've seen the script, because nobody's supposed to have seen the script. Because I think she got hold of it because presumably one of her clients was up for probably for the Lyndhurst part or something like that. And anyway, she got hold of the script, and I had a read of it, and I thought it was wonderful. I thought it was very funny. Probably just the first script it was. So I went along for the initial interview with the casting directors, and it would have been with the producer John Bartlett and the director Robin Nash, and of course I was very well prepared because I'd seen the script, I'd really studied these scenes, and I was asked to read, as you usually are at a first interview. I think I read very well, and of course didn't say that I'd seen the script, and then I got asked back. Then I got shown the script officially, and then I was asked back on a recall to meet Lawrence and Morris, and then I got the job. I thought, this is very funny and very well written, and I really want to do this. I think this will do me a bit of good, and it would be really enjoyable, and so it proved. Was I surprised by the initial premise? I thought it was unusual and quirky, but not really surprised. I've always been a great fan of science fiction, and this is a sort of science fiction concept. I've enjoyed short stories and novels about time travel, particularly stuff by Ray Bradbury. Very, different, but it's a concept that has always fascinated me. This thought of being able to go back in time and, what happens if you change the past? Does it change? Does it then change things in the present? And what happens if you go back and kill your grandfather? Do you then suddenly slip out of existence? Or so all of those sort of conundrums have fascinated me. So I enjoyed that, and I enjoyed the way really that Marks and Gran played with that over the various series, and tried to keep an integrity within the concept. Given that you have a very bizarre concept, I think they actually, on the whole, were very successful in keeping that truthful. It's not a problem for me at all. If you're in a comedy, do you want to be part of the sharp end of that? You want to be making people laugh. And I don't. If I'm the butt of a joke, it was never a problem for me. In fact, I try and put myself in that situation. Given that character, of course, that's the way it's going to be. So no, I was delighted with that. Did it affect people's perceptions of me to be the butt of the jokes, to be playing rather a dim character? I don't think so. No, I was never. It never struck me that people were treating me as some kind of idiot in real life. I mean, the thing that did affect me was, as the series became successful, people would start to recognise me, which was mostly fine and delightful, and sometimes was a pain. I'd been in the habit in years kind of leading up to the beginning of the series of taking my two older kids away to a holiday camp occasionally, somewhere like Butlins, for a cheap holiday. I became aware that I had to stop doing that because people would recognise me, and if you're kind of sort of trapped in one place, you would kind of not get left alone. So, but most of the time it was not a problem. And amazingly, I still get recognised, and people will say to me, "Don't I know you from the telly?" And some people know it straight away, but sometimes I have to help people out, and tell them, yes, it's probably Goodnight Sweetheart. Oh, yay, with the policeman! Did I get a chance to add to Reg Deadman's character as the seasons went on? Well, yes and no is the answer to that. I think I played pretty much what Marks and Gran wrote for me, and I think I added to it. So I noticed that what happened, for example, in the first series, there was probably only one episode, the first episode, where I had much to do. And I think I flattered myself that I brought something extra to that. And then, I think a little later in the series, they wrote me up a bit, sort of responding to what I had done, I got the feeling. And then in the second series and on, they did respond to the little quirks and things that I would put in, not new lines or anything like that, but sort of character things they would start to build in. So yes, I did bring something to it, which they then responded to, but it was quite an organic sort of thing. I wasn't surprised by the show's success because when I first read it, I thought, this is good stuff. It's a really interesting and funny concept. And it's got Nicholas Lyndhurst in it. So, it's written by Marks and Gran, for goodness sake. So it's, it stands a fair chance of being a hit. I didn't have any problem about committing myself to a long-running show. And it didn't feel like that, because the series were done one at a time, as it were. I mean, nobody said right at the beginning, you are committed for 6 series, which we ended up doing. I do remember Morris saying to me right at the beginning that he wanted it to go right the way through the Second World War. He wanted to do, 1940 to 1945. But there was no commitment either way, so they could have, pulled the plug at any point. So it didn't feel like I was committing myself to a long-running series. And I was always delighted, that when they did put an option on us for the next series, which had to be taken up by a certain date, and when each time they did take it up, I was delighted. I did notice that when a series had finished, I would sometimes I would tend to go up for Thick Policeman, because casting directors tend not to have an enormous amount of imagination. And I also noticed that I would never get an episode of The Bill or something like that while I was doing it, because I was playing a policeman in one series, and so they wouldn't let me do something like that. So it did close off one or two opportunities, but no, and it hasn't proved that I've been typecast, because as I was saying to you earlier, I'm a character actor. I like to transform, and so I play all sorts of extraordinarily different characters, I'm pleased to say. I think Goodnight Sweetheart appealed to the public because it's got something for a whole range of ages. So I think it appealed to young people, because there's the contemporary strand of the program, and also because I think the 1940s stuff was so well done that it was interesting to a young audience, to see what for them would be their granddad's recent history, or grandparents, and I think for older people of a slightly older generation than me, it was interesting for them particularly to see the 40s stuff done so well, and I think they did do it well. We did do it well. I think there was some pains taken to make it accurate, to get the historical references correct, to get the costumes right, and the language right. Yeah, I think that was it really. I think there was something for everybody in it, and it was funny. I didn't know any of the other actors before we started filming, although I was certainly aware of them all. Nick Lyndhurst, obviously, from Fools and Horses and other series. Vic Maguire from Bread. David Ryle, who was in the first series as a regular, was working in theatre at the National. Michelle Holmes from Rita Sue and Bob 2 in particular, and I didn't know. I'd not come across Dervla. I mean, Dervla's become a big star since, really, but no, she didn't. I didn't know her at all before. I was aware of them and those, and thought to myself, well, yeah, this is a strong cast. We're in with a good shout here. Yeah. The chemistry with Nick. It felt easy. I've got an enormous amount of respect for Nick. I think he's a terrific actor to work with. Enormous generosity of spirit as an actor. So, what would happen was that we'd start working on a script, and I'd do something, and he would just fall over laughing. We laughed a lot in rehearsals. So if I did something funny in rehearsal, he'd completely come out of character and just laugh at me, and which was great. It was very encouraging. And then, obviously, as it went on, he'd keep in character. And I had an enormous amount of respect for him. I think he's terrific at what he does. And it was a huge... Nick Lyndhurst was in practically every scene in all of those series. And so he really carried it. And I have a great admiration for him, the commitment with which he did that. So I think our chemistry was based on mutual respect, really. I think he thought I was good at what I did and was funny. And often, bless him, he would suggest things to me. He said, why don't you try that? For me to get a laugh, not to feed him with a laugh, but to give me a laugh. His view was that it didn't matter where the laughs came from, so long as the laughs came. It didn't matter who got them. He certainly wasn't anxious that it would be he that got them. So I think, the chemistry came out of mutual respect and a shared desire to make the whole thing funny and work. I think it must have been in series 3, where I meet up with my old flame, Margie, and I'm introduced to this child, which then we realise is my child. As it happened at that time, I had a 4-year-old, Alfie, and he came in and played the part. He had to run into the pub, and I had to pick him up, and then he had to bop me on the nose. And he came running in. I picked him up, and he went whack on my nose. Oh, it really hurt. It was a sweet little scene. So I enjoyed that, and we play that occasionally at home. He's now 13. Oh, Phoebe, probably, because she's prettier than me. No, I couldn't, but there's no other character I could play, really. No, I was perfectly happy playing Reg. Oh, Goodnight Sweetheart, of course. I mean, no, that's the truth. I mean, certainly Goodnight Sweetheart is up there, in the top 3. And certainly that the most fun I've ever had doing television. I think theatre stuff. I did a play, gosh, 25 years ago now, called The Ice Chimney, which is a one-man play, all about a man who tried to climb Mount Everest on his own. True story. This man called Maurice Wilson, and he gets up to the bit on Everest where the climbing gets tough, and he can't do it anymore, and he keeps trying to climb this ice chimney and falling down, and in the end he dies. And the play is sort of set on the side of the mountain, and he just kind of recalls his life. And that was a remarkable thing to do. It was a year of my life, an enormous learning feat and performance feat, and I really enjoyed that. And I really enjoyed being with the Royal Shakespeare Company. We did all 3 parts for Henry VI and Richard III with an ensemble. And that was a very happy time. I enjoyed that. Those are the ones that stick out, I think. Other roles I've played, quite recently I've been in a play called Democracy by Michael Frayn, which started off at the National Theatre and then went into the West End, where I was playing the head of West German security services. The play was about Willy Brandt, and the sort of the height of Willy Brandt's career as a Chancellor of West Germany, and he gets brought down by a spy scandal, and the play is about the relationship between him and Günther Guillaume, who turns out to be the spy, and my character, who's playing the head of security, just keeps missing the clues, basically. Another dim policeman. Rather dim in rather a different way to Reg Deadman. So that was a nice body of work, and always nice to work at the National Theatre. I played in a film called Hitler, The Rise of Evil. I had some scenes with Peter O'Toole, where I was playing one of the many chancellors of Germany just before the Second World War. They went through them like nobody's business. For me, acting is about transforming. So I just love the opportunity to be very different. So it was a great joy to me, the early part of my career, where I was playing in repertory theatres and doing a different play every 3 weeks. Get a chance to be in a Pinter play one week, and then when that 3-week run is finished, you're playing Horatio and Hamlet or something like that, and then you're in a new play. So I wouldn't like to. I have no idea how many plays I've done over the years. It must be 100 or more different plays, and of course, when you're doing television stuff, the turnover's even quicker. You'd just be doing a role and then on to something else, and that's what I love about being an actor: a chance to draw out different aspects of yourself. If I could go back in time, where would I go? I think the first choice would have to be to go back to late 16th century England, London, and to pop into the Globe Theatre and see Hamlet as it was being done by Shakespeare's company, and then maybe pop round to the stage door afterwards and meet Shakespeare and some of his company, and and talk to them and see what it was like, and just find out how it just genuinely get the feel of what it must have been like being in those companies and what that world was like, and if it's anything like we fantasized it to be in films like Shakespeare in Love, and you try and get a concept of how differently they did those plays and made those plays sound, and how different and how similar they were as human beings. And then I'd love to bring Shakespeare back and have him visit here. I often have this sort of little fantasy about walking down the road with Shakespeare and, just sort of chatting to him, and then a lorry goes by and thinking, would he leap into the hedge, out of fear, How would it be for somebody coming from the 16th century to see the extraordinary society that we live in today and see an aeroplane go overhead, or, sit on a bus or a train or something like that. They answer a mobile phone. It would just be so extraordinarily alien. Yes, Talking to Terrorists, which is the play I'm doing as we record this interview, though by the time you see this, it'll probably be long finished. Talking to Terrorists is it's what's called a verbatim play. It's put together from interviews with real people, and it's about terrorism. The title comes from something Mo Mowlam said, Mo Mowlam being a former Secretary of State for Northern Ireland. And she said that to deal with the problem of terrorism, you have to talk to terrorists. And that's kind of the theme of the play, really. Not only is what actually the play does, but it's in as much as it's possible to suggest any solutions. Maybe that's one of them, that in order to make something happen, the productive thing to do is not to bomb terrorists, but to actually talk to them. And so what happens in the play is that various terrorists and former terrorists, although they would refer to themselves as freedom fighters, are interviewed. Somebody from the IRA, somebody from the UVF, somebody from Palestine, somebody from Kurdistan, and there's various other people, politicians. Mo Mowlam, I've already mentioned, Norman Tebbit, one of the characters that I play, who's interviewed both as somebody having an opinion about terrorism, being the hard man, but also a victim of terrorism, because he and his wife, of course, were involved in the Brighton bombing. And all of that material is kind of woven together very cleverly, put together by the director, Max Stafford Clark, and the writer, Robin Soames. And it's a fascinating piece of work, which most people who come to see it are really taken by and moved by. So it's been interesting. And it's clearly a very, as you can gather, it's a very serious piece of work. I mean, a long way away from something like Goodnight Sweetheart. Although, I wouldn't in any way, undervalue my experience, and say that one is better than the other, And interestingly, I think my approach to both of those sorts of pieces of work is very much the same. And that basically, what I'm trying to do as an actress, tell the truth. And, the style might be different. But basically, I think, for me, and it's part of my training, I trained at a wonderful place called the Drama Centre, which is very much based on the work of Stanislavski, where you sort of try and get into the psychological reality of characters. And, I think I did that as much for Reg Deadman as I do for, Norman Tebbit or a psychologist that I play in this play, who are both based on real people, and I was able to, talk to those real people and, observe them on video and that sort of thing. Yeah, so that's what I'm doing now, and hugely enjoying it. It's quite a challenge because most of it is delivered directly to the audience. It's mostly a storytelling experience. So, there's character work involved in becoming those characters. But there's very little, actually, dialogue between characters on stage. A few little scenes, but mostly is delivered straight to the audience, which is hard work. Is it a surprise to people to see me doing something different? I suspect, on the whole, people don't make the link. I've certainly never been aware of anybody having a kind of reality problem with thinking, oh, but that's Reg Deadman up there. It's not Norman Tebbit. Or I think it's hard for my family. My wife, for example, often finds it difficult coming to see me in things because she can see me, she can see Chris Ettridge, you know, through all of those roles. And my children, the same, find that quite difficult. But I hope it's not a problem for people. I think it becomes, I think some soap stars who are in things for years and years and years have that problem where, you know, people will find it difficult to take away the identity of that character they might be playing. Do I prefer comedy or serious roles? Well, the truth is, I love doing both. I don't honestly have a preference. For me, the thing that makes me happy is if I have a good role in a good project. Then I suppose the next down the list would be if a good role in a not very good project, and a not good role in a bad project I would have said no to, unless they were offering me a vast amount of money, in which case I would say, oh yes, how much? Oh yes, of course, it was marvellous. But my favourite thing of all is where, actually this happens in talking to terrorists from time to time, where you can make the audience laugh, and then you pull the rug away from under their feet, and then you make them gasp. That's what I love doing. Next for Christopher Ettridge is retirement, I think. I'm 2 weeks away from the end of this job, and I have nothing else coming up, which is often the case. You know, stuff tends to come up at the last minute, or not. You know, there might be a little gap. You never know. I hope not. I need to earn some money after this job. You know, it's one of the things that is really scary and exciting at the same time about being an actor. You don't know what's coming next. It's very hard on your family. It's very difficult to plan anything. You know, if I book a holiday, you know, something's bound to come up. It's hard. So yes, the truth is, I don't know what I'm going to be doing next. And so what I've started doing it with, you know, one or two of my actor friends. You know, will say to it, "Oh, anything coming up for you?" No, I've retired, darling. So that's me.
Good night, sweetheart. All my prayers are for you. Good night, sweetheart. Till we meet tomorrow. Dreams enfold you. Thin and real I'll hold you. Good night, sweetheart. Good night.
I was in a swimming pool once. I was swimming about in the swimming pool, and this girl swam up to me. She must have been about 12, something like that. She swam straight up to my face, and she said, "Didn't you used to be famous?"